Hello everybody. Tonight I'm going to be talking about propagating roses from cuttings. It's a quick way to get a lot of rose bushes from just a little bit of vegetative material. Uh, Quick caveat, you should not, and it is illegal to propagate patented material vegetatively. That being said, everything I'm propagating is past copyright, they're old stuff. Okay. So this right here is a stem that grew this year. This is big long stem of Dr. Huey, which I don't really love, but some people like, so I'm going to propagate it and be able to give away a bunch of cuttings, or hopefully will be plants, next spring. Right now it's the very beginning of October, so everything's starting to get nice and firm and hard. There's not really much softwood left. There's a little bit of softwood left, but this is all cane from this year. So let's start. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually prep a couple of things before I start cutting on the cane, because you don't want to make cuttings from the cane until you're ready to do something with them. Otherwise, your cut ends start drying out. All those cells at the end that you want to differentiate and turn into callus tissue and then roots, if you dry out those cells there, you're doing damage that will hinder you. So this cane, until we're ready for it, we're leaving it whole like this. I'll cut at the end, but the whole thing is here. So got a glass of water. What I'm going to do is I've got some rooting hormone. This is Clone X. I've used a couple different ones. I don't always use rooting hormone. This is part of the experiment tonight because I'm going to do something a little different. I don't like to use much rooting hormone at all because it seems to generate like a big burst of roots from one spot that aren't really structurally sound roots. They're just like a bunch of roots, as opposed to several nice roots that go out and branch out like normal. But this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to dilute this down. What I'm going to do is take chopstick, get a little bit of rooting hormone on it, mix it in the water, and now it's in the water. Okay, so I've got that. There. The other thing I'm going to do is plants like energy, and when you're doing cuttings, they need a little bit of energy to make sure they survive until they actually can fend for themselves. Photosynthesizing for making sugars, and of course putting on roots to take in nutrients and water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small spoon of honey, and this is also going to get mixed in. So mixing, I've got honey and rooting hormone water, which now I'm going to set to the side over here. I've got my pruners. These are bypass pruners. Some people use anvil pruners. I do not like anvil pruners. Anvil pruners are the ones where you have a flat thing and the sharp blade comes down and squeezes to it and chops things. Whereas a bypass pruner, you have a solid piece down here. So you have a kind of solid one here on the flat little blade, and it comes and it bypasses it and cuts the piece off. Now, when you have a bypass pruner, the side that's sitting over here, so if my finger was a stem, the side that's on this side is going to get a little bit crushed because it's getting pushed up against this. Whereas this side that's over here is going to be a clean cut relative to this side. So what you want, what I like, is a clean cut on all my cuttings. Some people like to do a lot more damage to their cuttings, and yes, you will get more callus tissue, and yes, you'll get more roots, but is it good root structure? I don't know. I like roots that come out and fan out properly, and having just a bazillion roots right off the bat, coming in a big cluster, will give you a quicker start, but in the long run, in my opinion, it's not as sound of a plant, and it's not as natural of the structure of the roots. It's not like they would grow from a seedling or whatever. You end up with this mess of roots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the whole stem here, or the whole cane, before cutting it in pieces. So I'm going to go ahead, and I got these little side branches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them just out a little bit from it here, because there's some tiny little buds in here, and there's also some of the little buds that are dormant in here too, which I'm going to leave that alone. I want the vegetation gone though. So, and the other thing I'm going to cut is, some people will rub these off and break them off. I don't like to break them off because you're doing more damage. Might give you a spot to root from, but it also gives you a spot to rot from. And I'd rather have rooting be a little bit slower, but less rot. So if I can have 100 cuttings and 90 of them make it a little slower, that's better than 100 cuttings and 30 of them make it a little quicker. But that's just my opinion. So anyway, let's finish this. So I'm going to do here, here, and you hear the click-clacking of 5 dogs that are wanting attention right now. So we go down this relatively quickly. I don't want to leave all this cut out in the air because you're drying stuff out. So I've got my stem here. I've got my water and sugar and hormone solution there. So what I'm going to do is now finish off all the little spines here. Getting to the point where we're almost ready to do our cuttings for rooting. Okay. Luckily this one doesn't have too many thorns. Some of them are just lousy with thorns. But okay, so we've taken off most of our sharp thorns here. We've all of our little buds going down here at the stem. What I'm going to want is, now I was explaining the side that crushes and the side that cuts. There's a reason. What you're going to do is, this should become a habit. The side that you want to keep, you want a clean cut on. The side that gets tossed, that can be crushed, doesn't matter. So when I'm making cuttings here, the side that's the bottom side below this little bud here, so I want 3 buds. So I go 1, 2, 3. So there's no buds down here. So this is going to be sacrificed. And I'm going to cut it up above this one because I want 3 for my propagation material here. So what I'm going to do is, the top, I'm going to cut that first, because if it dries a little bit before the bottom, that's okay, because the roots, I'm just going to try to get roots down here. If this dries out a few seconds longer, doesn't matter. But I want to go quickly. Once I make these cuts, I want to, don't leave them out in the air. I want to get them where they're moist and keep these cells alive. All these cells that I expose, I want to keep them alive. I do not want them dying off and then end up with a little bit of dead tissue there that then is going to set us up for rot. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip these around so the clean cut is towards, so this is the top over here. Clean cut is then this piece that we're keeping here. So clean cut's on that side. I'm going to go then to here. About a 1/4 inch, liberal 1/4 inch down, and now I've flipped these this way. I'm cutting here, so we have a clean cut on this side. This piece is getting ejected. Now I'm going to take this, dip the top, flip it over, put the bottom in. This is going to sit here and soak while I cut the rest of these. So let me do this. Again, it's got a little kink here, but it'll probably grow anyway. Guys, go lay down. Okay, we've got some buds, so we're going to clip here, there, dip, dip, here, there, here, here. And probably the last one, which is going to be that. Okay, now I've got more I've done here. So set these aside and show you what we're going to do with them. Okay. So what I've done is I've taken, you can use newspaper. You can use basically any heavy, non-glossy paper, preferably without a whole bunch of ink on it. You can use like the newspapers or whatever, but you know, not the colored stuff, just the, you know, black and white, non-glossy. Here I've got a bag from the grocery store that I cut up and is now wet. So what I did is you take the paper, newspaper, whatever paper you got, but you know, heavier, we're not talking about printer paper. And you're gonna squeeze it out. You've got to make this moist, not wet, okay? Everyone hates that word, but that's the word you want for this. That's getting put aside. Now let me angle this down here a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna lay this out. There we go. Now I'm going to take all my stems. I want to try to make sure all the tops are up here, bottoms down there. If you flip them around, trying to root the top, and you don't want that. So you're going to keep them organized, tops and bottoms here. And I'm just going to lay them across. There we go. And they're not touching. What I'm doing is I'm putting them out like little soldiers all in a row. That. Now I've had these soaking in the water, so they're a little moist. That'll set up here. Finish sorting these out. And the reason to separate them like this across here is, as opposed to putting them in a big bundle and then wrapping paper around it, is if you have mold, a little bit of mold starting on one, and you have them in a bundle, it's going to go through all of them real quick. If you have them separated out like this, mold starts on one, it's going to have to then kind of work its way around or try to get through that paper to get to the next one. So you have a better chance of not molding all your little cuttings. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to take and roll cuttings like a big sushi roll. A little bit more. Okay, so now the ones on the end, here's the thing about the ones on the end. If you're like me, you're going to want to peek. So I've made this roll here. Everything's in here in this moist bit of paper. All my cuttings there ready to go. And every so few days, you can open it up just a little bit and check the couple on the outside without unwrapping everything, okay? When you open it up, and if you have any callus tissue starting to form or anything, every time you expose that to the air, which is, you know, generally our homes are not that high in humidity, you're going to do damage to them and set them back. So now I've got all these little cuttings in this bundle, and you can put them, if you have a plastic, you know, plastic grocery bags, you can put it in plastic grocery bags and wrap it up. Or I'm using a container here. Just put this down in the container, close it up, and this right here will sit for about 2 weeks. After a week and a half to 2 weeks, you're going to open up and peek at the last couple on the outside of that roll. And when you start seeing callus tissue forming at the bottom, then you're going to get your stuff prepped and plant them out. And when you plant them out into your soil, I use maybe 40% peat to 60% perlite. Pre-moistened, wrung out, and then I plant these in that. Usually do it at night because the humidity and temperature is better and less likely to shock your little injured cuttings here. And then that's what I'm doing with cuttings. So now this has got to sit and hopefully form some callus tissue. I'll also open this up and kind of let a little bit of air exchange every couple of days. Well, knowing me, probably every day, maybe twice a day. But I'll be watching to make sure that this stays moist but doesn't dry out. We don't want it wet. We don't want any water just sitting on the bottom here, because if there's water sitting on the bottom, that means it's too wet. It means you're going to have rot. Right now, these are just kind of sitting in here. They're very, very humid. They've had a little bit of rooting hormone. They've had a little bit of sugar water. Hopefully they decide they want to live. And part of that's going to be putting on roots. So there we go. There's how I have done rooting vegetative rose propagation. The only thing I've done different this time is I'm doing the sugar water and the rooting hormone. I've done the rooting hormone, a little bit of rooting hormone in water before. I've never done the honey with the rooting hormone together in water. So we'll see how that goes. I'm thinking I'll get decent results out of that, but we'll see. The other fun thing, if you're going to do this and you have multiple different ones and you have one of these big containers, you can label each roll, and you can have multiple rolls and just stuff them in here, and you can have 10 different batches of roses, and then so each roll is its own variety of rose. So but right now we just got a bunch of Dr. Huey in here, so hopefully about October 15th, we're on October 5th, October 15th I'll be checking this, and somewhere by the 20th I'll probably be planting them and then covering them up and have new roses in spring.